what happens is they become so successful, they forget what rejection is like. And so when they start something new, they forget all the emotions they went through originally. And they're like, what is happening? Maybe I've lost my mojo or something like that.
One of the things I like to say to agents all the time is if you work as hard for yourself as you would for somebody else, you're going to do just fine. But no one's making sure you punch in and punch out.
Yeah.
You've got to do that on your own.
If you have to make 50 phone calls, make 50 phone. If you have to make 100 phone calls, then I guess I'm just making 100 phone calls because the success that I want to have comes from how much work I'm willing to do.
Welcome to a private conversation with me, Steve Robbins. I'm sitting down with some of the biggest names in Indianapolis real estate. I've enjoyed these conversations immensely, and I hope you will too. A big thank you to Executive GM Ian Soroyan and his whole team for hosting us at Cunningham Restaurant Group's Commission Row and Mel's Speakeasy, located in downtown Indianapolis within the Pacer Sports and Entertainment Complex. Check out the show notes to learn more. And now, my very first conversation for the show. The publisher of Indy Real Producers, Remington Ramsey. Oh, you've been doing a podcast for a while and multiple different things with podcasting. What have you learned?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I did a podcast right next door actually in the Pacers Arena. So we don't have the show anymore because we created a new show, but it was called As Indy Grows. So you can still find those episodes, actually. It's on Facebook and YouTube and then obviously Spotify. But
how long ago was that?
The last episode was it was like probably 2021.
Okay.
And so when we had Scott Pollard on, who is an ex-Pacer, who is battling right now for his life. I don't know if you're tracking that.
I think I did see something.
He just got a new heart transplant.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, his journey is incredible, but he's fighting hard, and he's a big inspiration in the industry because he's a realtor. So I actually was interviewing him. We had really cool guests at the As Indy Grows podcast. We had politicians, we had athletes, celebrities, and so we did that next door. And then when Real Producers podcast took off, I had to put that aside because that's kind of like the main gig, which is a podcast for which represents the magazine, which is the top 500 agents in all the major markets. So I've learned a ton, man. I honestly, like we were just talking about before, when people watch, you have two different types of podcast digesters. You've got the diehards, right? So who are going to listen to every episode because they like the content and they like you. And then you're going to have people that watch the shorts and say they listen to the podcast. And that you want both. You want both of those things. So we've made sure that we are catering to, all forms of social media.
So how has what you've done as a podcaster evolved in terms of your approach, just maybe production, anything? Like what's changed for you?
Well, in the first year of a new podcast, you're really trying to figure out what do you want to do and what is the best for the audience. So for like Real Producers, we have a couple of different types of guests. We've got realtors who have really cool stories of overcoming obstacles, right? So just in this first calendar year, we had a realtor who was shot that came back, from basically being paralyzed and became a top realtor afterwards.
Yeah.
We have a couple different stories. We had one that was diagnosed with MS and was in a wheelchair for 2 years and then just decided she didn't want to be in a wheelchair and just mind over matter figured that out and just ran a marathon last year. I mean, just crazy stuff. We have one realtor who was, she was, I believe, 4 or 5 years old when the genocide in Cambodia was happening. And she's, her only toy in Cambodia is dried up balls of mud that she was using for marbles. And she had them in her pocket. And they would come, like a lot of parents would hide jewelry in their kids' clothes. And so she, at gunpoint, on her, like a gun is to her head, they're searching her, and all they could find were those mud marbles. And then so flash forward like 30 years, now she's like the president of her association and a top realtor. So, I mean, these stories are phenomenal. And then you'll have the coaches and the authors and like the big names that are also on the show. So the balance of making sure that you are not inconsistent from show to show with people who are wanting to listen to it every single time, but then also a show that I want to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get bored. I mean, the whole reason we're doing this is I enjoy it. So it's just, it's a balance, right? So that's it.
So, well, I've got a lot to learn. We'll see where I go with it, but I appreciate your insight.
Yeah.
Because we're going to try to grow this thing.
So I think you're onto something cool, though. I mean, you've got
appreciate that.
Good connections, and yeah, I'm excited to see who you have on.
I got some good ones coming up. So the podcast is an offshoot of the magazine.
Yeah.
And before I maybe get into the magazine, so Ryan Herget, who used to run our High Garden office in Indianapolis, and actually his brother Tyler's right over here producing this show.
Yeah.
He was the division president for our Indianapolis office, and I don't know, I was out of town, maybe in one of our other markets. I really don't remember where I was, but I remember coming back, and he said he had a great sales meeting. I said, oh, yeah, who was in? And he's like, this Remington Ramsey, he sells knives, and he's going on, and he's super excited. And I'm like, hold on, what?
Yeah.
Why we had a knife sales guy?
Yeah.
What I didn't understand is that what you were really doing, and what you've become a master at, honestly, congratulations, is offering value and a service to connect people and to grow you and your brand and your influence.
Yeah.
And you were doing that this is maybe 2015.
2013.
2013, all the way that far back. So you were saying, let me help you guys build your audience, use the 7 levels of communication.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier, and how to leverage social media.
Yeah.
And that was early on, 2013. I mean, people didn't know what the heck they were doing.
Well, that was the problem. So I was selling closing gifts. I was at Cutco for 10 years, and I was selling knives to mom and pops, right? I was did the same thing that every college kid does, where you go and you sell to your parents, and then they send you to the neighbors and their friends, and then you kind of expand it from there. And I did that for a long time, and I enjoyed that. I got into management, and then I got into the specialty division called Cutco Closing Gifts, which is just selling to realtors. And the reason I liked that was because it was residual. If a realtor sells a house, they give a gift, they run out of gifts, they buy more because they have more houses to sell. And there was nothing else. And Cutco was such a good product that if I sell you a set of knives, they're guaranteed forever. So I'm done. I got to find new clients. That was the only program that was able to be residual. So when I first got into it, I'm calling all these offices. Now, picture this. I'm 23. I hadn't bought a house yet. I know nothing about real estate, nothing about the mortgage side, nothing. And I'm calling these realtors saying I want to sell knives. There was no way around that. I want to sell knives as closing gifts because it hadn't expanded to Indy yet. So it wasn't like known. It already started on the West Coast. So no one was saying yes. They didn't want a kid to come in and sell knives to the realtor. It didn't make sense.
Honestly, if I would have been the one, if Ryan would have said, this guy wants to come in, and I didn't understand the full scope, I would have been like, I'm sure we can do something about it.
Yeah, so nice people. There were some nice managers who were like, let's give this kid a chance. And I'm very thankful they did because I was able to sell and start it from there. But what I did was I realized, okay, I need a different approach to get into these offices. What am I good at that I can help these people? And I realized the average age of a realtor is 55, and I'm 23, and half these guys don't even know how to log into Facebook. Done. I will teach social media. I don't even know.
Where did the idea come from? Or just hit you?
Yeah, I mean, I was following Gary Vee a lot at the time, and he had just come out with a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook, and I was like, you know what? I'm not naturally like just brilliant about anything. Everything that I've ever done, I've learned from others, but I can teach what I've learned. So if I get 4 books and, a ton of podcasts and, YouTube University, as they call it, and learn this subject, I can just repurpose it. I think about that all the time because, like, if you think about someone who's being taught how to do social media and one of the tips is be funny, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm not funny. Like, I try to be and I'm not, and that would just be like the worst thing if I try to create an account that's funny. Well, maybe so, but you can take memes that you think are funny and repurpose that and do it so often and get so many eyeballs because people are just laughing at these memes. Now you haven't created anything, but you are repurposing. Now you're known as the funny guy.
Right.
And so for me, it was like, okay, I know how to do Facebook because I was in college and for 5 years, I just know how to do it. It shouldn't be that hard to learn how to do the business side if I just apply what I'm learning from these business books. And I can teach it probably at a higher level than anyone who's struggling just to log into Facebook. And so that's what I did. And I said, hey, listen, I want to teach your agents how to do social. And it was a hot button item. Like everyone was like, hey, you gotta learn how to do.
How fast did it go kind of from 0 to 100?
Pretty fast. I mean, so in my first year, I broke the rookie record for Cutco, won the Rolex, did all the accolades and everything. And after really 2 years worth, I had 500 clients that were using Cutco as their closing gift.
Wow.
Which is pretty good in Indy because out of 10,000 realtors, 500 of them are doing most of the homes, most of the sales.
Absolutely. No, it's better and pretty good. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You didn't get the Rolex for nothing.
Yeah.
So that turned into the magazine, Indy Real Producers. And I was actually just reading yesterday your publisher's note, your most recent one, where you were talking about your beginning of times of a Cutco salesperson.
Yeah.
And your first couple of appointments. Oh, man. And sounds like those went over almost like a lead balloon, other than you at least made one of the sales.
Yeah.
But what you were talking about is how you made the first sale and how then you didn't make the second sale and how you went from floating on air to, you're out of the industry. This is the rejection as a salesperson. A lot of the people maybe listening to this, watching this, they're in sales, they're in real estate, maybe they're in other industries, I don't know. But being a salesperson is a very interesting livelihood.
Yeah.
And
it's emotional.
It is emotional. So what was that like in the beginning for someone who was 23 and just kind of learned the ropes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first got into Cutco, I was 19. And so the only job I had ever had at that point was owning a lawn service, which there's not a whole lot of rejection. I mean, there is, but it was referral as well. And I wasn't trying to have 10, 15 lawns at a time. Like I was just 4 or 5 was good enough for the amount of money I needed to buy basketball cards.
Right. Okay.
So like the business started to grow. And so I already had a little bit of a sense of like how to work with people, but sales, no sales training. And so when I got into Cutco, they do a phenomenal job. I'm a huge fan of Cutco. I will send every college kid I know that direction. And so you do a presentation, they teach you how to do a presentation, and they say when you're in training, you can read, right? Like, hey, I'm going to do this presentation for you, Steve. Is okay, I'm in training. Can I read this so I make sure I get it all right? Which is great because then the pressure's kind of off. You can get everything, and the product really does sell itself. So you're teaching kids how to do sales with a product that's already a cheat code because people want the product.
Right.
So that was cool. But there's 2 points in the presentation that they teach you. The first one is how to cut the penny, the famous scissors that cut a penny. And the second one is a rope demonstration where you compare your rope to the rope of the person or to the knife of the person's choice. So I go into my first appointment and it's with the piano teacher at my church, and it's terrible. Like first of all, I'm wearing a tie, so I'm taking this very seriously, but the tie is getting in the way of the entire appointment. I'm like with these knives. I get to the point where I'm supposed to cut the penny. And I put it on the table, and I can't cut the penny. Like, I'm jamming it. I'm shaking the table. Like, at some point, she goes, I believe you. Like, you're going to break my table.
Right.
So I take out the penny. It's, like, barely dented. And then the part where...
Practice this?
Yeah, I practiced it.
It always worked out?
Dude, yeah. I could not figure it out. I had the yips on the first.
Well, hey, you're new at this.
So then you compare... This is where it all, like... Afterwards, I realized, oh, man, that's embarrassing. So you say, hey, I want to compare my knife to your sharpest knife. Well, the problem is she had already bought Cutco. So she had the same exact piece that I have, but I'm still reading. So she goes, okay, here's the rope. Cut it with your knife. And so she cuts it with her knife, and it's Cutco, so it does phenomenal. And I go, okay, now take mine. And she takes it, and she cuts it. And I go, see, wasn't that better? Like, I read her right off the script. Yeah. Oh man. But at the end she bought like $300 or $400 worth. And I was like, I am the greatest salesman in the world. I went home, I busted the door down, and I said, Mom and Dad, I'm the greatest salesman in the world. First appointment. And they're laughing and they're happy and they're encouraging, right? Because it's like, you want to be encouraging on the front end. So then my second appointment was with my aunt and uncle down the road, 2 doors down. So I take my kit, I'm walking and I'm like basically still vibing from the first appointment. I can't wait to shoot down my second customer. So I get over there and I do a much better job, mind you, right? Because it's my second appointment. So I'm better because I've already done this once. I think I even got penny cut.
Oh, good job.
At the end of the appointment, they politely said no. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I can get some recommendations. They said, no, we're not giving you any recommendations. This is my family, right?
Wow.
So the 2 blocks,
Pretty hard.
it felt pretty harsh at the time, but that's just the game. And full circle, by the way, 10 years later, they bought Cutco from me.
Finally.
Yeah. So I walked back in and I literally quit. I said, Mom and Dad, I quit. I'm not joking. I quit. Like in that moment, I was done. And it took like all night and the next morning for me. And I finally did an appointment for my parents, and then I recommitted. And I probably quit. I mean, I was at Cutco for 10 years. I probably quit half a dozen times,
Quit in your mind, or you went?
No, like literally quit. Like, hey, here's my kid. I think I'm done because it's just not for me. And then, but the longer it went, the more I realized, okay, in fact, so the biggest time where I literally said, I'm done, I'm not coming back, was in between the 2 summers. Because I went back, and this would have been 2008. I went back to school. I'm like, that was fun. Most kids do that. They sell for a summer, and then they leave. Like, Cutco is a huge recruiting funnel, and the ones that, stay in it go through management and make a really good life for themselves. Well, I came back, and in 2009, there were no jobs. People in their 30s couldn't even get hired. So I was like, I guess Cutco was saying, hey, we want you back. I'm like, I guess it's my only option. So I got into management, and the rest is history. But, yeah, it was emotional. Like it's still emotional.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still selling things.
Oh, yeah. I still go through those emotions. The difference is the amount of time I let them sink in, right? So like when you're new, those destroy you. And we have 130 locations for the magazine. We started in 2015. It was me, one of one. I went around. Your wife was one of my first appointments. And we grew it to what's now 130. When we're recruiting people, I still have recruiting calls today. I'm going to do trainings, once a month, and we're launching new franchises. These are very successful people, a lot of them already in real estate, successful realtors, that what happens is they become so successful, they forget what rejection is like. And so when they start something new, they forget all the emotions they went through originally, and they're like, what is happening? Maybe I've lost my mojo or something like that. But to be fair, it's just a new thing. It's just a new cycle they have to go through. And the ones at the top, the ones that are elite, have figured out how to not let their emotions dictate their actions immediately. And the ones that suffer, at least from what I found, are the ones that let their emotions just run their lives. And that's what I did when I was younger. And what I learned to control over time was like, it's still going to hurt. Mike Deck?
I do.
Mike Deck is the, by numbers, most successful realtor all time in Indiana.
Mike's going to be sitting in that chair.
All right. He's going to be a great interview. Ask him to talk about the sale he lost, his most recent sale that he lost.
I will.
So he was sitting on a panel for me. And at the time, which is, the most successful year in real estate history for Indiana, was $184 million. And he sold 180 homes. His average sale was 3 times the average sale. And he crushed and did it 180 times.
Amazing.
Just phenomenal. So this is someone who doesn't deal with any rejection, right? He's perfect. Nothing happened. Well, he lost a sale the week before when I had him on the panel. And he was talking about this sweet old lady that said, hey, Mike, I'm not going to use you. This other realtor thinks my house is worth more. We're going to go with them. And Mike said, that stung. I didn't like to hear that. And it almost hurt my feelings. And this is someone who sold $180 million worth of real estate. And it's like,
Rejection.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, but he'll make up for it.
And he does. And that's the thing. Like, the amount of time that he will think about that is way less than maybe someone else who is, again, not even someone who's new or doesn't sell as many houses, just someone who has control over the emotions. Don't let your emotions dictate the logic of the situation. So that's what I learned. That's the biggest key that I learned when it came to controlling your emotions over sales.
You've seen a lot of agents. I mean, comparing even what you did and all the times you quit at Cutco.
Mm-hmm.
But how long did it take before you kind of felt like you were over the hump?
That second summer was big for me. So the first summer is probably when I did most of my quitting. But that second summer, I got under better management. I got under people who were way better than me.
Okay.
See, at the time, like, I didn't realize this, but I was the most successful person in that branch office, but I wasn't that good. It was just, not a great scenario. Like, the environment wasn't high producers. So I got into a second office where there was a ton of people better than me, which was the best thing for me. It humbled me.
Don't be the smartest person in the room.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I was learning from them, and there was so much that I didn't know that I was excited to learn. And I was in an environment that was encouraging that, and then also supporting and still, celebrating successes. And so that's, once I had that summer, breaking records and feeling like, okay, this is where I need to be. And then having a little bit of a leadership role where I was impacting others. That's when it stopped for me. I didn't really quit a whole lot until I sold the business.
We were talking off camera about looking at things through a certain lens, and I can't help but hear all you're saying and hear the same story that I see time and time again with real estate agents, and almost quitting, having the successes, but in the beginning mainly having failures, and how long it takes to really establish yourself and get over the hump. How many real estate agents, professionals do you think you have a relationship with?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, the magazine goes to the top 500 agents. So my efforts to have relationships with all of them, like our goal in Indy is to meet every single person that gets the magazine that year. We don't ever hit it. It's a lofty goal. People are busy, but you think about the managers, the managers are just as engaged in our platform as the realtors are. It's important to me that I have good relationships with them because they open doors that I could never open. So it's a lot. I mean, nationally. So,
and what kind of common threads have you seen through the years of agents that make it versus don't?
There's a lot of common threads. I think the one that always comes to mind first is that being comfortable with no, that rejection, that emotion that we already talked about, but being okay with that and hearing that, and what do you do with that word? What's your relationship with the word no? And what's funny is when you're kids, I have 3 under 7, and they hear no on a minute-to-minute basis, and it doesn't impact them the way it does us as adults. Somewhere along the way, we really don't deal well with that word, except for the ones who make it to the top. They are not. For them, when they hear no, they hear, okay, that's probably good. I probably wasn't supposed to work with him, or that means not right now, or something that gets them excited about the next step.
It's probably just getting used to hearing it, and whenever you get used to it, it doesn't bother you the same way it does if you don't hear it very often. A lot of people aren't putting themselves out there to even have someone tell them no.
That's true.
So, and because they're afraid, everything that we already talked about. But kids, they've blown right through that fear because they've heard it a million times.
Yeah, and they know a no is coming.
Yeah,
right. And they're like, "This is gonna be no, but I'm gonna ask anyway." So we should have that childlike mentality in sales because, I mean, if you can't get past no, you're not going to make it. And to your point, if someone gets in and they're new, and I coach people all the time, the goal is on a Monday to book 15 to 20 appointments for the week on the phone still. Now, texting, emailing, Facebook, that's all extra. For us, we still do the old school phoning because it just works.
Yeah.
And basically, if you make 5 phone calls, you'll book 1, right? And so I'll still get on a coaching call with someone and be like, hey, how many appointments you got? And they'll say, I got 5. I've been calling all day. And it's a simple question. I just go through your phone log, how many calls have you made? Oh, I guess I only made 12 phone calls. I hear that all the time.
I believe it.
And the goal is if you have to make 50 phone calls, make 50 phone. If you have to make 100 phone calls, then I guess I'm just making 100 phone calls because the success that I want to have comes from how much work I'm willing to do. And sometimes we lie to ourselves. I don't think they're lying to me. I think they're lying to themselves. They really do feel like they're phoning all day. But what happens is they sit down.
They're definitely lying to themselves.
Yeah. They sit down. I want to make phone calls. And then an email comes through and they're like, oh, I got to respond to this email. And now you're on your computer. And it's like, oh, I have a notification on Facebook. And now I'm scrolling. And you know what? It's pretty close to lunch. So I'm just going to do this for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to have lunch. I'm going to come back and then I'm on the phone. All right. So now you've lost 2 hours. So then you sit down for the afternoon and the same cycle happens again to the point where you felt like you were doing a lot of work, but unless you track it, log it, and be honest with
Who are you talking about coaching here? Who is this?
For this particular thing, I'm just talking about coaching my own franchises.
Yeah.
Who are running a magazine in Charlotte, Nashville, Orlando.
Because you can be talking about any real.
I know. Yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
Yep.
Of course, the people that are making it in your magazine, the top 200, or you might, how did you? So also talking to Ryan Herge, he said maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, 2015, 2016, I don't know exactly around there, that you were going around talking to a handful of people and went to lunch with him and had maybe 50 questions or something about, hey, I'm going to do this magazine. You think realtors will like it? What was it was a great idea. Obviously, it works. You tapped into agents' egos, and there's plenty to draw from there.
Yeah.
But, what was kind of your concerns going into the magazine, and then how's that all worked out for you?
Well, so what he's talking about is I met with 50 real estate professionals at any stage of the game before I actually came out with the magazine or, selling ads for it or anything like that. I wanted to know, what do I not know, or what am I not thinking about? And so I had a list of questions that I was asking all of them, and I remember most of the conversations very vividly. And most people were very polite, even when they told me not to do it. They're like, this is not going to be successful. Part of the reason was there was a similar magazine that was in the city that failed. And I found out two big reasons why it failed. One was that the guy was not local, so he didn't really understand Indy. And the second reason is he allowed brokerages to advertise. And so what was happening is if Remax is advertising in this magazine, they're sending it out to everyone at Keller Williams. Keller Williams' front desk is like, why is Remax sending me a magazine? They're throwing it away immediately.
Right.
And so it failed pretty quickly. That, and the third element was, this was 2015, so at the time, the whole mantra of print is dead was going on. So I had to battle that. So I'm already going into these appointments knowing that that's what people think. And with people like Ryan, I would just ask him, hey, do you read magazines? When did you, and why did you stop, and what did you like? So I'm asking all these magazine questions. I'm also asking all these content questions. And then the other element was, hey, we want to build this as a community. The magazine is going to be a part of this. But we're going to have events. We're going to have a social media aspect. It's just going to be all inclusive. The magazine is going to be the coolest part, though, because it's never not going to be cool to be on the cover of a magazine. I don't care if it's digital or paper or what. So that's what he's talking about, is I met with all those people. And so at the end, I had mostly people that were like, it's okay, Remington, you'll have other big ideas. And to be honest,
So more than half the people said it was a bad idea?
Most people said it was in so many words. They didn't just say, hey, this is a bad idea.
Right.
Basically, they were concerned for me because they're like, you're going to waste your time. This is not going to work.
And the main reason they thought it wouldn't?
Print is dead.
Well, I guess you said that.
Print is dead was a big one. Real estate agents aren't going to show up to the events, and they're not going to care about a magazine that's all about them.
Agents are going to care about a magazine that's all about them?
Right. In theory, like when you say it like that, it's like agents have egos. Why would they not want it? Well, because one particular issue is only about one realtor, right? Or a couple of realtors.
Except for, let's be honest, the ranking
is
what drives the magazine.
The standings.
Am I wrong about that?
Oh, no. The first thing people do is they go in the back and they see where they rank and where friends rank. Yeah.
So that idea you're telling to people, they didn't think
that
buy in on that because...
Well, it's based on MIBOR, right? So MIBOR at the time wasn't, people didn't care what their ranking was in MIBOR because no one ever saw it. They don't even know how to log in to see it. But the second you start printing it, sending it, now they very much care.
Yeah.
And now they really want to know why
this is public.
New construction. Yeah. Well, it's kind of, it's private. It's going to realtors. It's not going to the general public.
It's pretty public, but let me tell you.
Yeah.
People offices are looking at it.
Oh, yeah. The realtors for sure.
That's what I mean by it. It's public within the realtor industry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
So congratulations. It's a big deal. It works.
Yeah.
So, baby, what do you have to say about tapping into the ego of the realtor? Because it's really, in my opinion, I'm sure there's a bunch of other reasons that I'm not aware of, but it is what drives it.
Yeah. Well, kind of. So the realtors themselves, we have this whole drill we do when we're training a franchise where we just come up with all the reasons why a realtor cares to read this magazine. And so it's more than just the ego. The ego piece is cool, and it's third-party validation. So if I put you on the cover, which you have been on the cover of the magazine, now you can go and show that as a validation source of, listen, it's one thing for me to say, hey, I'm Steve, I'm good at selling real estate. Okay, I kind of believe you. No, I'm Steve. This magazine said I'm good at selling real estate. That's a whole game changer.
Sure.
So now they're using that as third-party validation. That's the first thing. The second thing is this community, right, is really good for realtors. When I first started doing appointments, some of the rejection I was getting as a realtor saying, why would I show up to an event with other realtors? I can't sell them anything. And that's just such the wrong perspective. The reason you show up and network and have conversations with other realtors, especially in this market, I learned this from Alan Williams. He said when the market was super hot right after COVID and there was like multiple offers, that's not normal for Indiana.
Right.
But it was normal at that time. And he said he won deal after deal because he had a relationship with the agent on the other side. In fact, he was putting together deals that weren't even as good. It wasn't their best deal. It wasn't their best offer. But he was winning it because they're like, I know Alan. He's a good dude. He's going to get this done. And we would much rather work with him than this agent who won't even return my calls, even though it's a cash offer and, looks prettier on paper. And so if you're not attending those networking events, if you're not going, and the other piece of it is just cool. It's cool to, rub elbows with the people who are the best in the industry and to be seen. Like that's part of what they need to do.
Well, it's funny you bring up Alan. You may or may not remember Alan used to be one of our business partners.
Yeah.
And so Alan definitely benefited from what we learned when we opened up our first office outside of Indianapolis in Las Vegas. We went there in 2003.
Okay.
And at the time, take whatever multiple offer craziness that is happening here and multiply it times some factor. That was what was happening in Las Vegas. People were buying in multiple homes. We're interviewing a lady to possibly be in management with us. She was saying her strategy is to, every home she sells, help the person selling it buy 3. 1 to live in and 2 more as investments. Take the proceeds and do it. Anybody she helped,
that's cool.
They made bank, big time.
Yeah.
And what Alan saw that I'm sure he drew from, and he was still with us up until around that time, is how we were having to compete in Las Vegas to get an offer accepted. And that's been one of the benefits of SkyGarden and Easy Stream growing, is how we've learned stuff from other markets.
Sure.
And so, I mean, here you can't do the love letter really anymore where you're appealing to a seller's emotion.
I tried that, man. I tried that with my lake house, and man, did it fail.
Really?
Yeah, it was not like
you were trying to buy it.
Yeah, we were trying to buy it at a cheaper. Hey, this is next door to my aunt and uncle. Would love a better deal, and he basically said, "This is what it cost."
Correct.
Stop writing me letters.
Well, you hit the wrong disc profile.
Yeah, I'm sure it works in some scenarios.
It does, but so it got to a point where what actually was happening in Las Vegas regularly was where buyers were making their offers in person with the seller and trying to get a personal connection with them. Anyway, it was a wild time. It was even the bubble and the forming of it was a wild time, and then the burst was even wilder.
Yeah.
And not, one of the great things about Indianapolis real estate is that even when it was riding high in 2003 all the way up to 2007, and even when it was crashing from 2008 to 2012, 2013, it was never too high or too low.
Yeah.
And in other places where we've been, Vegas, Tampa, and other Orlando, Florida, at the time in Florida and Vegas, and we were in Charlotte then, but Charlotte's kind of like Indy, but in Vegas and Florida, the bubble really
pretty aggressive.
I mean, it was like a friend of mine had a $300,000 house, same floor plan in his neighborhood. After the bubble burst, he paid $300,000, probably at the worst time. There was foreclosures going for $75,000.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so we have risen from the ash.
And tell me if this is wrong, but in Indy, wasn't it like less than 10%?
The swing? Yeah, probably
around there.
I'd say 10 to 15, probably, depending on
nothing like what you just described.
No. Yeah, but that at the same time in Las Vegas, 91% of sales for 2 or 3 years were distressed sales, meaning you were dealing with foreclosure, short sale.
Yeah.
It was terrible. But, having survived, honestly, the crash, and you came in after this, but I'm here to tell you everything that's happened with the lack of inventory today, rates really, in my opinion, being held higher to offset the low supply and keep demand in check to some point. All this you can see through that same lens we've been talking about. of the crash.
Well, that's what's interesting about, so those two people we mentioned, Mike Deck and Alan Williams, number 1 and 2 in the city.
Yes.
And all these recessions you're talking about, all the crashes that you're talking about, they just had their best years ever. And so for me, starting in the business world in 2008 was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me. I don't know what's going on. No one told me I wasn't supposed to be good at selling my product. I just went out and did what I was told, and I was able to sell it. So now when you hit another similar or, even different, but just recession or reasons why the outside things should affect your sales, like, it's not even a thought in my brain. It doesn't even occur to me. And some of these other people that we're mentioning, I guarantee it's the same thing. Like, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
We've seen the rates before. We've seen the bubble before. We've seen whatever. The only thing we hadn't seen was COVID. And to be honest, for the first year, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Realtors were, eating it up. And then the next 18 months was a big struggle. And so, I don't know, realtors, real estate, everyone in real estate was fat and happy. And I think, honestly, the thinning of the herd is a great thing for the people who are doing this business at a high level.
We're going to lose some hobbyists.
Yeah.
We already are, but it's going to happen a lot more quickly.
It's not as fast as I thought, though. Like in Indy, there's around 10,000. I would have thought that, 10% would have fallen off, but they're not. And they're joining teams is the other thing. That's the trend. Like you mentioned being in Vegas, like that was good for Alan to see that because he's bringing that home. Now, a big trend that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing this as well, is teams spreading across state lines.
Right.
So now, and you're thinking, why on earth would you do that? Well, not only is it good for referral sources and expansion, and you're learning from these other markets at a much higher level if they're physically on your team. I didn't even think about that until you said that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's been a competitive advantage for us, and just seeing we're in Indianapolis, things happen in the Midwest last.
Yeah.
So things that are happening out east or things that are happening out west,
except for
go ahead.
Franchise restaurants. They come to Indy first to see, because if they can survive here, they can survive anywhere is the thinking. So like 96 or 82nd Street.
Yeah.
They're like that Keystone area basically.
Yeah.
That's a training grounds for all those restaurants are like training ground restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I didn't know that. So
yeah, like Fridays, Maggiano's, like all those restaurants.
Yes.
That Marriott right there just makes a living on bringing in.
Our office is right there.
Yeah.
I'm in the area all the time. Commission Row offers an unforgettable dining experience with high-quality steaks, a raw bar, and exquisite seafood curated by an expert culinary team. The menu, designed to delight every palate, features seasonal ingredients paired with an extensive wine and spirit selection. Open weekdays from 4 p.m. and for brunch at 10 a.m. on weekends. Continue the evening at Mel's Speakeasy below. After dining, enjoy an after-dinner drink with a wide selection of wines, cocktails, and spirits. Open daily from 5 p.m., Mel's is perfect for relaxing and unwinding. Commission Row and Mel's Speakeasy. An unforgettable dining experience awaits.
I like these podcasts that's just so conversational, though, because if, like, I've been on podcasts where, like, you have to have such a rigid set of questions. Like, my podcast is only 30 minutes, so, like, I run out of time.
Yeah.
With this, like, we're getting content that I could never get because we're just going. I love that. That's my part of the show. Yeah.
You're going to be a comfortable guest who's used to doing this, honestly.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't be as comfortable.
Yeah. Wait till you have a guest that you get on the show that has one-word answers.
Yeah, well,
that'll be a really fun show.
I'll feel that, and maybe I'm thinking about this too. And I'm totally cool with, by the way, this kind of stuff being in the podcast because I would like to talk about meta.
Yeah,
but I'm totally cool with it. Them asking me as many questions as I'm asking them, and maybe those people will be more like that. And but by nature, I'm a question asker, and I actually sometimes it's a positive, but sometimes it can probably be a little negative because I can just keep drilling and probably like, what's wrong with this guy? But I just really enjoy getting to know someone deeper and kind of understand what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't. And you're very real connection.
You're very analytical. Do you, I don't know if you're like me, but like when I watch a movie, I put myself in the movie. Like literally when I leave the movie theater, I feel like I've just been hanging out with my friends in that movie.
Yeah.
Do you like learn from different things? Like, are you trying to constantly improve things? Like you were talking about being a perfectionist.
Yeah. I've definitely soaking in the information and synthesizing it into how our daily life happens for me.
Yeah.
What you just said really reminded me of something that I read somewhere that really stuck with me, and that is that teaching a child to read is the best form or best teacher of empathy, because it puts the child into the character and they start to see the world.
Oh, wow.
And I had never seen that before. And it really stuck with me forever now.
I totally believe that. That's why
you have young children.
Yeah.
Get them to read.
Well, a lot of people don't read fiction. Like in our circles, like it's business, self-help, or bust. You know,
Right.
I'll read the Bible. That's it. But fiction for me does that.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I still read fiction. Like people are asked, "Hey, what's a good business book?" And I'll give them a fiction book. And be like, I learned so much about the business from this. I read Grisham and I learned more about the law than I could any other textbook about law. Right.
Right.
So I totally believe that.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, empathy by putting yourself in the lead character's role.
Yeah, or any character, but probably the lead. You know, whoever's voice it's in.
But I'm an active like listener and watcher. Like I'll literally have my phone out in movie theaters taking notes about something they said that has nothing to do with what they're probably talking about at that moment. It just made me think of something that's going to make the business better.
Right.
Do you do that?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Definitely things hit me. To a fault. It actually, my reading and movie watching has really declined because to a fault I'm listening to podcasts nonstop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorites?
I mean, I subscribe, I think, to like 300.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How do you sort them?
Well, I've just kind of when I do have problems getting to a lot of them. That's the problem. But
I'm honored that you listen to mine.
Yeah.
Now that I know that,
it's in the rotation.
Yeah, that makes me feel really good.
It's true. So obviously a lot of real estate, but sports and particularly basketball more than football, but both.
You ever listen to Alex Hormozy's podcast, The Game? I think you did.
Oh, okay.
He's really good. He's coming onto the scene. He's kind of like the new Gary Vee at the moment.
Yeah. Well, but that type of, I mean, I love Malcolm Gladwell, probably my all-time favorite author. So behavioral economics, stuff like that. True crime, sometimes when I'm in the mood. You know, a lot of science. Love science.
Have you read Truman Capote's
In Cold Blood?
In Cold Blood.
My kids all had to read it in high school, but I actually never read it. Now everybody says that.
It's incredible.
I know.
If you're a true crime, you gotta read that.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah. In Cold
But
Blood.
the problem is, like I was saying, and this has been something I keep telling myself I'm going to change, but I am not reading anymore because I'm listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
So I got to work on that.
I think there's something to be said for actually physically reading, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks too, and some of them like you have to get through because there's just dead parts. And I also enjoy listening to the voice of the author. Sometimes I put like little things in, but like there's something to be said for like reading. Like my wife and I try to read for an hour a night. We don't always do it, but sitting in front of the fireplace and reading is a lot of fun for us. But to the active learning thing, like recently, so I've been writing a book, and in order to write it, I'm reading books on how to write books, right? So one of the books was published by Chandler Bolt. Phenomenal book. Even if you don't want to, write a book, it's just a great book.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this book, and so normally it's just us sitting together and, we're reading. It's very gentle. We got jazz music on. When I started reading this book, like every page, I'm like putting it down, getting my computer out, typing. She's like, "I'm sorry, are we going to read?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm reading." So I get back to it. I'm like,
Reading is an acting sport.
Oh, yeah, for me, I'm like, and that's...
What was your biggest takeaway from this book?
Well, so I've been thinking about writing a book for 10 years and then telling myself I'm going to write the book for 2 years. And then I didn't actually start writing the book until after I read this book. And the reason why is two things. One, he gave me a very practical way of how to get started. Apparently there's like between 15 and 25,000 words on average for most business books right now. And his theory is if you commit to 30 days writing for an hour, by the end of that 30 days, you'll have your book, at least the rough makings of it.
Okay.
So that's what I did. The only rule that I had was for an hour, I need to sit down and it's tough. It's tough to do for 30. Like think about doing anything for an hour for 30 days, like Halloween, Thanksgiving, like nights where like you just didn't want to. There was one time I was in bed and I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, I forgot to write. And I committed to this. And if I commit to something, I'm going to do it. So I got out of bed, turned the light on, and I wrote just so that I could like at least have something for that day. And at the end, I had my book roughly written. So now we're fine tuning it, and yeah.
When might this be out?
The goal is to have the book out by September. It's one for this field. It's a real estate book. It's basically how to sell to realtors, right? So I mean, for me, the concept, like Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
Yep.
Every realtor, if they haven't read it, should read it. It's a great read. There's nothing like that for vendors, and that's my perspective. Is from a vendor, like calling on realtors. I did that when I was at Cutco. I did that when I'm building Real Producers. It's what I'm teaching vendors to do, like our main clients, lenders, title companies, home inspectors, painters. We're basically teaching them marketing on how the best ways to market to realtors. And so this book is basically what I've learned in the last 10 years on how to build a business calling on realtors. So I'm pretty pumped about it. Yeah, that comes out in September.
Okay. I'm excited to read it.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be my entree back into book reading.
Yeah, there you go.
I need one.
I'll help you in more ways than once.
I appreciate it. So a minute ago, I was enjoying what we were talking about there with you putting yourself into the character of the movie, and then
it's really bad with like superhero movies because when I walk out from Batman, I'm like, someone's chasing me. But go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, you're good. So, what's your favorite movie? I guess was really my question.
Man, I can't do that. I can't do favorite movies. I can do favorite movies within a genre, but I love movies.
Okay.
Like, so sports movies, like I love Rudy, Remember the Titans. Those are two classics.
Hoosiers is not in there.
I like
Purdue. Yeah, I need to get that in there.
I like Hoosiers. It's just a little slow for me. It's not as fast as the other ones, but I can watch slow movies. It's just not, like there's certain movies where, like if you're flipping through TV, people don't really flip through TV anymore, but like if you're flipping through TV and it's on, it's like, I guess I know what I'm doing for the next 2 hours. You know, those are two movies like that for me.
Probably all my favorite movies are old movies.
Old? Like how old?
So my top two for sure are Hitchcock's Rear Window. And 12 Angry Men, which is, I think, older.
12 Angry Men is great.
Yes. Those are probably my two favorites.
Do you like Casablanca?
I do.
I love Casablanca.
Oh, it's in my top 5.
Yeah.
So
many classic.
What's your favorite old movie?
That's Casablanca for sure.
Okay.
That's my jam. I love all the classic lines from that movie, and just like the way it's written is so, it's not underrated because everyone regards it like it is exactly as advertised. Like,
yeah,
the plot and the way it was written is just phenomenal.
It's something I'm definitely going to ask everybody is what's your favorite music or favorite band?
For me, that changes. Like when I was in high school and college, Weezer. Like I knew every Weezer song. They just keep coming out with music, and I can't keep up, man. That dude just keeps writing. The music that I'm in, I created a Spotify playlist for 4 different bands that I've been listening to the most recently. Chris Stapleton, Greta Van Fleet. Do you know who Greta Van Fleet is?
My favorite newer band.
Yeah, me too. I can't get enough of them. I've seen them a couple times live, and they got a lot better. The first time it was that the front man doesn't know what to do when he's not singing, and he just had this tambourine that no one can hear. And I'm like, you got to get something. So he got a lot better the second time. And then I was a big Mumford and Sons fan.
Okay.
But they kind of changed their sound. I'm trying to remember what the other one. Oh, Kaleo.
Okay.
The Icelandic band Kaleo. Have you ever heard them? They're awesome.
No.
I know you've heard their songs because it's all over the place.
Okay.
But yeah, check them out.
All right.
They're cool. What about you?
I'm definitely, so music was so huge growing up in my house. My parents watched TV some, but there was both my mom or my dad would be playing something on the stereo all the time. And I was born in 1971, so I was listening to, at the time, what was kind of 70s rock. My dad was listening to a lot of 70s rock and a lot of, he loved female voices with like husky voice, females with like husky voices like Janis Joplin, Bonnie Tyler. He loved Linda Ronstadt too.
Big Queen fan?
No, not really.
Not Queen.
I'm a big Queen fan. Yeah. Neither of my parents really were, but my mom listened to the Beatles and other rock, but also a lot of show tunes.
Oh yeah.
And then my grandparents, I would be at their houses, both sides quite a bit, and they all listened to a lot of standards, and from Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin to.
And you liked it all?
I love it all.
Yeah.
My favorite music today is hard rock, and Sinatra type music. Those are my two favorites. But I mean, I can listen to really anything and enjoy it. I will say, even though it's so popular right now, country's lower on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I hate it, but it's just, there's about 10 different mute types.
It has to be the right country for me to listen to. Like Stapleton kind of is, you know, a little bit of that bridging the gap.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much crossover there with country and rock these days.
Yeah. Do you feel like your show is going to be primarily about the business world or the person?
I think that I'm going to have people on there that will get, you've given me so many great nuggets today that will draw from almost any business or being a human too. And I think within that, it'll be more about the person.
Yeah.
And about their personal viewpoint on life. I mean, these are the things that what I've thought in my mind that this would be really cool for.
Yeah.
Is that it's something that the guest will be able to show their kids down the road.
Oh, sure.
That they see a side of them that, you know, they aren't very often see.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about stuff like music and movies and, you know, childhood. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Muncie, and we commuted to Anderson because my mom was a school teacher at Liberty Christian.
Okay.
So I didn't really spend as much time in Muncie during the school year. We would always be going, which a half hour doesn't sound like a lot in Indy, but like in Muncie, it was like,
right.
It was super.
I grew up in Lafayette, so half an hour is like, yeah, we're going halfway to Indy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was where, and then I went to school at Olivet, which is an hour south of Chicago, and then I wound up back here with Cutco, and have lived in Indy ever since. Yeah. Bought my first house, had less than $5,000 in the bank afterwards, and I had a panic attack. First night, we bought the house, and my wife was gone for some reason. I can't remember why. So it was just me in this big empty box, and I just...
What year is this?
13, 14, around there.
Okay.
Is when I bought the house. And yeah, it was a scary moment. And then I had this peace come over me where I was just like, God said, I got you. And so I was good ever since. But man, it's nerve-wracking. You forget, we were talking about like realtors who have, or anyone in the industry who's gotten so good at something that they forget how the beginning was. Like, that's really hard for those people to relate to someone who's new.
It is.
That's why I have a really big appreciation for Ryan, you, people who are in management and leadership, because you have never forgotten, or maybe at least you empathize with what goes on in those first year or two moments where someone's like, I don't got this. Like, this is tough.
We're at the point at Highguard where we don't very often hire, almost never actually, agents that have no experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes persistence. It takes skill. I mean, you can go on down the line with all the things it takes. That's kind of the rule. We'll make an exception to the rule if the agent's exceptional or it seems to be an exceptional person that can get over the hump. But I mean, the failure rate's pretty darn high. People just don't understand. I'm getting ready to start my own business. I'm opening my own business. The business is me. The brand is me.
Yeah.
And either they might not necessarily feel comfortable with being a public figure, or, you know, people like jokingly call it, don't be a secret agent.
I've never heard that. That's good.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
So you said the failure rate is high. 2 out of 3 realtors that launch from trying to get their license this year will not be here this time next year. Why is that?
That's kind of what I was getting right at. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's people that they're afraid of being a public figure. They're afraid of asking their friends and family for the sale. And like your aunt and uncle rejected you, they don't want to be rejected by their family, but they really don't feel comfortable being a salesperson for the most part. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be in this business.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that fall into that category.
So why do they get? So then, why do they get in the first place? If they're not anticipating those things, why are they going to get the real estate license? Do they see something where they're like, oh, all I have to do is, you know, show up and I get paid $1 million? They hear what's happening.
Their friend who sold a house and made $20,000 on the sale of the house.
They're like, I can do that.
And the answer to that question is 2 main things. One, and if I ask why are you, you know, what is it about real estate that's got you interested? and I interview a lot of different people that have from no experience to a lot of experience, but the people with no experience, why do you want to get into real estate? If their answer is flexibility, which it is like half the time, flexibility. I'm like, okay, we know where this is going. And then 2, it's the HGTV phenomenon of just people they see the glitz and glamour aspect of real estate on television is, it's 1% of that in reality. And so flexibility, looks cool, make a lot of money, don't have to work a lot.
Yeah.
And so they go, that's just in general.
What is it about real estate? Kelly Kilmer was on the podcast that you just listened to, and she was talking about real estate's the only one that has the people at the top, outwardly bragging about the money that they get from being so good at what they're doing. And she was alluding to like dentists. Like you never see dentists who are making the same amount of money as the realtors that are making at the top, like talking about how many, teeth cleanings they did to get this Mercedes Benz. Why is it different in real estate?
For me, it goes back to that whole idea that to get to the top in real estate, it takes a special kind of brand of ego.
Yeah.
And it's one that's comfortable with being in real estate way more than being a dentist. You're a public figure.
That's true.
And
it doesn't take as much of an ego to be as good as a dentist, or at least to reach the top, as long as you're building the business the right way. You don't have to be out in front of people like that.
I mean, I don't know what it's like to become a fledgling dentist and turn it into a practice, but by and large, they get hooked up with an established partners, and they kind of go into a fold the way doctors do these days. And so they had for the most part, they're building a network to that, but I'm sure the single dentists out there, the solo dentists out there, they're starting from scratch and they're building their business just like everybody else, and they're probably trying to use social media and get their name out there. I mean, if you're a dentist or a doctor, you've gone to school for however many years and have grown up in that whole, you've become an apprentice in one way or another, a resident, however it works. And for a realtor, maybe you have a mentor, maybe you don't. You kind of are like the idea of it, and the next thing you know, it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And so even if they have a guide to take them down the right path, they still have to show up and do the work and make those calls that you're talking about and put in the time. One of the things I like to say to agents all the time is if you work as hard for yourself as you would for somebody else, you're going to do just fine. But no one's making sure you punch in and punch out.
Yeah.
You've got to do that on your own.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I like that. I'm going to use that. It's the same thing for anyone who's run out of franchise for Real Producers. It's the same thing for the home inspector who decides to go off on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about the same game.
For me and for real estate people, it seems so much more grassroots, and for so many businesses, I guess it really is. But more than anything else, the brand is simply you.
Yeah.
And and some people, the other part of it too is outside of not necessarily being comfortable being a public figure, is just having the time and the money really to get over the hump.
I've got a thought on that. The brand part, we've been talking about kids a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that kids don't want to be astronauts and cowboys and NBA players anymore. You know what the number one thing that they want to be is an entrepreneur. They can't even spell the word. They can't even say the word. They want to be YouTube stars. They want to have
an influencer.
Yeah, they want to be an influencer. They want to have their own business. And I actually admire that. The problem is they want to do it immediately. And they hear the success stories, the 1 out of 100 that make it. Just, they see a 10-year-old who literally makes $1 million a month on YouTube. And what they don't see is the 999 others that are trying to do that, getting absolutely nowhere. But a more embracing your brand. I think about this, if the same kid would go into an industry and pick a job that they don't hate,
right,
and learn the skills and show up and learn how to work hard, all the meanwhile with the idea of being an influencer or a business owner, and then starting that side hustle at the right time, pivoting, if you embrace your brand of where you're at, it will catapult you. And so what I mean by that is Real Producers, I always wanted to have something. I always thought it'd be cooler to own a magazine, to be on the cover of a magazine. I always said that. I just never thought I'd actually own the magazine. It was like a metaphor for me, but here we are.
Have you been on the cover?
I've never been on the cover, no.
You're going to break the...
I'm not going to put myself on my own cover. I'll be on another magazine, but I'm never going to put myself on my own cover.
Okay.
So, but when I was at Cutco, I embraced that brand. I was loyal. I was like one with that brand. If you saw Cutco, it doesn't matter if it was a billboard, a card, anything. It didn't matter who was advertising on. The second you saw the Cutco brand, you thought of Remington. Like, I made it really hard for people not to think of me when they thought of Cutco. And that was okay, because now you have built Cutco. Cutco wins. I win because they know me as the Cutco guy. And when I pivot, which I did to run the magazine, originally it was to sell more knives. But then the side hustle became the main hustle when I got to the point where I could have it take over. That, in my opinion, is a much more duplicatable approach for our kids who are watching this, saying, hey, I need to own my own business. I love it. Like, I'm not asking my kids where they want to go to college. I'm asking what businesses they want to run. And if college is in the cards, cool. If it's not, awesome. It means less money and hardships and corruption. But if it is, cool. What business are you going to own when you get out?
Yeah.
And how are you going to get into that? You're not just going to all of a sudden build a business. You don't have money to do that. You don't have the experience to do that. You don't have the knowledge. You haven't been beat down yet, right? So go work at a job you don't hate, learn the skills, learn how to get beat up a little bit and to keep showing up, and then start that side hustle. I think that's way more duplicatable. And I think there's no one teaching that right now. They're all just saying, these millennials and kids that are still in people's basements and their parents' basements, they're just annoyed with them. And they just say, go get a job. Well, teach them. Their ambitions are not wrong. Wanting to own their business. Now, sleeping until noon and everything, that's wrong. But coach them on how to get to where they want to go instead of just being mad at them for having ambition.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on it.
Well, that's a great 2 cents. Before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you about the Remys.
Yeah.
So I was able to attend this most recent one. And so the Remys, evidently that's not a play on words with Remington. Come on now, let's be honest.
There's a little bit.
Okay, just check. Real estate Emmys.
Yeah, real estate Emmys. We wanted it to be like in Orlando. It was called the Orpies. We got one of our guys' last name is Espacet, so he called his the ESPYs. We kind of have fun with it. Ultimately, it's the Real Producers Awards Banquet.
Yeah,
we want to have one time a year where we get together and actually give out glass trophies to the realtors who are the best of the best. So that's what we did. Yeah, that was our 5th annual one that you attended.
Yeah. So how did that idea come about? Was it was it your idea?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just an extension of the magazine, right? So we do 4 events a year, and we wanted one of them to be a little bit more recognition based in nature. The other events we do are just socials, and it's fun to hang out. But one time a year, we wanted to take what we've promoted in the magazine all year long, which is realtors who are at the top and how they got there. And we wanted to recognize them from stage. And in the 5th year, we finally decided to start raising money to fight human trafficking, which is a huge passion of mine that came from Into, which is, the parent company of Real Producers. They give $3 million worth of commissions, by the way. So like anyone who signs up as a partner in Indy, we actually give transactionally to the cause to fight human trafficking. And so, yeah, we wanted to do it from stage and at the same time honor the top realtors, regardless of their brand, because everyone's going to their own individual brands, right? We're going, if I'm a Keller Williams, if I'm a Berkshire Hathaway, I go to my own awards banquet. But to be honored on a stage with everyone in the city, regardless of your brand, no one was doing that. So we decided to do that.
Yeah, wow. And it was a beautiful Scottish ride. It was gorgeous.
And right around the block.
Yeah, it was. Well, Remington, thank you for having a conversation.
Yeah, private conversation that's not so private.